All right, well, hello everybody, and welcome to Kaleido's webinar, Innovating, Building, and Scaling on Kaleido, where we're really excited to give you a full walkthrough of Kaleido's product, a full stack blockchain platform for the enterprise. We are the Blockchain Business Cloud, and this webinar is going to give you some great exposure to some of the key features, tools, services, as well as Kaleido's overview of the platform and how this fits in with the enterprise blockchain world. So I'm going to just kind of give you a quick walkthrough and introductions, some housekeeping notes. We are recording this webinar. We will make the slides and recording available in the next couple of days. While participants are on mute, you do have the ability to ask questions through the Q&A tool. So if you see that little Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, you should be able to click on that. Type a question at any point in time. We may answer offline. We'll also leave a fair amount of time at the end of the webinar to answer some questions live. So I encourage you to ask questions as they come up. Lastly, let's kind of just give a quick overview of the agenda here. So after introductions, Steve is going to give us a kind of a Kaleido overview, and then we'll turn it over to Nick, who's going to do a product walkthrough, and then, like I said, we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So just some quick introductions to our speakers. So really pleased today to be here with Steve Cerveny, founder and CEO of Kaleido. Steve's got over 15 years experience in emerging technologies, has had a role in launching over a dozen cloud services, as well as developing the industry's first blockchain managed service. So Steve has deep experience in both enterprise and blockchain. Nick Gaske is joining today as well. So Nick is a customer success manager over here at Kaleido. Nick plays a role with lots of the solution engineering and architecture, technical specifications and writing, has a hand in many of our biggest clients' projects. Is just an all-around expert in blockchain, particularly with enterprise Ethereum, but also many other aspects of blockchain. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve, who's going to kick us off and give us kind of a walkthrough of Kaleido's Blockchain Business Cloud. So Steve, over to you.
Thank you, Andrew. And welcome everyone from wherever you're tuning in from around the world. We're just thrilled to spend a little bit of time with you, taking you through Kaleido. Here on the East Coast of the US, there's some winter weather on the way, and that means there's a lot of happy school children and probably less happy parents in the area. So what I'm going to do is spend the next 20 minutes or so setting the table, giving you a little bit of a sense for what Kaleido is, and just walking through a few slides here. And the context or the framework that I'm going to use to do that is these three phrases: business networks, radically simple, and for enterprise. If you think about business networks, the context here is that our business networks are not that great. They're very legacy. We've accumulated or built these systems over a number of decades. If you look across industries, you'll see the same sort of problems repeated over and over again, whether we look at lack of transparency, lack of trust, and how that filters through into supply chains, into value chains, how that results in capital being tied up or collateral being needed or additional extra parties, extra hops, and so on. And so this is really a systemic problem that we have. In fact, one stat, about 2/3 of enterprises report that this legacy infrastructure is the most acute problem, or is the main impediment to really finalizing or taking the next step on the digital transformation journey. And so if we kind of take a look at a picture of what a typical back office looks like, you see things that you would expect to be there: mainframes and SAP, ERP type systems, line of business systems that may be homegrown or may be packaged. And we've certainly accumulated many categories of systems over time. But we can think of these logically working together as a system of record. One really interesting box in the corner there, is what we'll call the B2B, or the set of servers and components that connect your enterprise into the network of partners and other counterparties that you do business with in order to serve your customers. And it's in that B2B box where we see a lot of value being trapped. We see digital transformation plays happening throughout the system of record. But this B2B box, as we've been talking with you and working with many of you since 2015 now, there's a large understanding that there's a huge opportunity space to really revitalize these B2B networks and modernize them. And there's also a strong understanding now that enterprise blockchain is that breakthrough, that killer app capability that can enable that B2B part of the back office to really be reimagined, rebuilt, and modernized. And we do that through smart contracts and ledgers. And if you're just really new to blockchain, I encourage you on Kaleido.io, we've got lots of resources for you to understand sort of some of the basic patterns of what blockchain is and why that's true. We're not going to focus on that today. What I'm going to do is move on to explain to you that really we've built Kaleido to help solve that problem. Or if you think about that pattern of those organizations that we just showed, who are trying to move into that modern business network, if you take a sort of a networking lens and look at that, then what you really need is a control plane that spans across multiple organizations that can help. So a multi-party control plane that can help coordinate and keep these systems in sync. You need a data plane that's decentralized. So you don't want to, of course, you can solve a lot of your problems just going wholesale into some big centralized database, but most organizations don't want to run their businesses that way. They care about their privacy, the security, and the integrity of the data that they own. And so that's why a blockchain network is really interesting in this B2B space. But it also brings a challenge because the existing data planes and infrastructure layers that we've built up don't serve this decentralized technology well. We often say that Kaleido needs, or that blockchain needs to sit above the clouds. And so with Kaleido, we've built, you can go open source through our modules. You can go cross cloud. We partner with both Azure and AWS, and you can go hybrid as well with Kaleido Private Stack. And it's not a choice of either or. You can start at anywhere on that spectrum, and you can grow as your network grows. You can start a little bit more centralized just to get going, and you can decentralize. And we've built a control plane and the data plane to help you get where you're going with your business network. And the last thing I'll mention is these member planes. The idea that your privacy and isolated runtimes and really that connectivity into the rest of your back office systems is very secure. And along that sort of tenancy and deployment set of options, you can find the right one for you, whether it's cloud native with the next gen system or whether it's behind your own firewall for now. Those member planes really put you in control of your keys, your backups, your business continuity. We built that all natively into what Kaleido is, and it's in our DNA. And so stepping out then, the business networks, wrapping up this section, I want to leave you actually with a bigger thought, with a higher level thought. If you look at what some of the thought leaders and analysts are starting to write about in this space, we're just moving into a new frontier here where these modern business networks can actually move the entire economy forward into what's now being called the ecosystem economy. Using new technologies like tokenization and powering these modern business networks, we can start to realize as industries things that were not approachable even 5 years ago. So it's a very exciting space to be in. But with Kaleido, you can really take those practical, pragmatic steps to get you there. And so now what I want to do is move on to the second section. We talked about business networks. Let's talk about keeping it or making it radically simple. So a lot of times, we're asked, why aren't we seeing more enterprises in production? And I do like to point out that there are more every day, and so it is a growing number. But let's first understand really the path to get to production, and then we can start to have a better understanding for the journey that the challenges that come along in the journey. Let's take a typical IT project, POC, pilot, production. Well, when you think about the context of a blockchain project or a business network modernization type of use case, at the POC stage, you tend to get overwhelmed with all the new technology. Consensus algorithms, new programming languages, smart contracts, all of that. How does it fit together? How does it work? I've got 4 different ways to do privacy. I need to consider zero knowledge proofs and cutting edge maths or old world type systems like document stores and so on. Once I get past that hurdle and I'm moving into a pilot, then typically I've got a handful of stakeholders with me, and there you commonly start to see what we call the shared IT problem. It's the idea that I was talking about in that prior picture of you really need a control plane that's going to span across all of these organizations that are trying to deploy these new apps together. And you need that decentralized data plane to get you there. And so shared IT becomes a really big consideration and something to work through. And then finally, going into production, you're thinking about governance and how are you going to scale your consortium, thinking about the classic challenges of production, disaster recovery, business continuity. Do I have an SLA? Is there a vendor there that's going to answer the phone 24/7? And so all of those challenges are there as well. And so there really are some unique hurdles mixed together with some sort of classic IT challenge hurdles that you need to get through to get you to production. In addition to that, if you look at the goal of these new category of apps that are being built on modern business networks, what we've learned is that there tend to be 40 components that are required to really get a solution all the way through into production. And the blockchain is only really 5% of that, or it's a small percentage of that overall load. But an interesting thing to notice is there's a whole set of components that exist alongside the blockchain or get deployed onto the blockchain. They may be bridging off-chain to on-chain. They may be leveraging new constructs like tokens in order to fulfill the use cases. And so what we've done with Kaleido is not just focused on that 5%, but understanding that we're building a platform for the entire business network. We have a whole set of capabilities that are plug and play. You're going to see those in the demo in just a few minutes that just work together. There's a single set of APIs you can use in order to build those into your apps. And so what we've introduced, and you can read a lot about this on Kaleido in our blogs and on our doc site, is what we're calling the full programming stack. It's not just the blockchain layer. We see a whole new set of exciting technologies that are being either augmented or completely reimagined. So these layers on the stack here are layers that we've seen in past waves of IT, but there are new capabilities that are being brought along in the tokenization blockchain space. And so you're going to see a lot of these and how these are just native capabilities on Kaleido that you can run together, plug and play. So we really try to be this easy button, whether it's through the hundreds of APIs for developers that you can access, Everything you're going to see on the console today is available through our APIs as well. Whether it's the idea that you want to start small, maybe a little more centralized, and you ultimately want to be in the long run, and you want to decentralize over time, we can support the simpler case. We've built for the more sophisticated cases as well. And we really just want to take the plumbing off of your hands. So just like AWS does that for cloud infrastructure, or Microsoft, or whoever, or Databricks does that for analytics and Spark and AI, Kaleido's doing that for blockchain and for modern business networks for you. The final thing I'm going to touch on is the enterprise grade nature of Kaleido and how that's in our DNA. So while we are a startup, we are serving some of the largest companies in the world. They're in production on us. We are sort of thrilled to work across many major industries now, whether it's banking, it's the supply chain space, retail, entertainment, and more. And we have wonderful case studies available online as well if you want to go in deep on some of those. We're enterprise grade, so we're one of the only solutions out there that's ISO 27000 certified. We actually have 3 different ISO certifications that we've achieved. Things that are really important to you, like how you manage your keys. What you'll find on Kaleido is there's a set of options that go all the way to the cutting edge of what's possible for enterprise use cases. We offer 24/7 support, single-hour response time, the sort of things that enterprises need to go into production. That includes access to our sort of world-leading blockchain experts. All of this is available across cloud and hybrid. Maybe on a future webinar, we'll take you through our private stack and the technologies that make that work. I do want to mention that high availability disaster recovery is just a built-in, it's a native aspect of the platform. And so that sort of comes for free, as it were, in the box. We are very much committed to open source. We are active in many different communities, whether it's the Kubernetes communities, the cloud provider frameworks that they provide, whether it's the blockchain code itself, Hyperledger, some of those projects, Quorum and others, the Ethereum project as well. So we're very active and committed, and we believe that's what enterprises want going forward. The last thing that I'll mention before turning it over to Nick, right on schedule I might add, is we have been doing this for almost 5 years now, the team here at Kaleido. And what we've learned is we can best serve you in different ways when you're on different stops of your journey. So we've created right-sized packages they're very simple, that help you get going quickly when you're in the earliest stage of your projects. And as you're moving forward to production, we can work with you to build a custom enterprise contract. And so this includes, if you're a startup, we have special startup packages. That if you're an innovation lab working at a large enterprise, we have tailored packages for you as well. And we have packages for the right stage of your journey. So if you're curious, if you want to learn more about those, find us on social or respond back to the webinar invite, or contact us directly. We're happy to talk to you more about it.
So we have 2 demos for you guys today. The first one's just going to revolve around some of the core functionality in Kaleido, standing up a business network, standing up some nodes. And the main takeaway you should notice is that it's really flexible in terms of configurations, but it's also radically simple to basically create that blockchain infrastructure layer. So we'll go through this demo first, and then the second demo is a bit more use case oriented. It weaves in a number of components and shows how they can interact and integrate very seamlessly. Okay, so the first call to action on Kaleido is to create your business network. Our nomenclature for that is a consortium. So you can name this apropos to what you're accomplishing. You can upload some mission or some legalese, and then you're going to set a home region. This will be the cloud provider and the underlying region. One very, very cool thing on Kaleido is that we are multi-cloud and multi-region. So you can proceed to whitelist additional clouds, additional regions, which will be available as deployment zones when you're creating nodes or creating services. We see that organization ABC is the first membership, and now we can create an environment, an actual blockchain. So if this is single region, we can choose one of our whitelisted regions. If it's multi-region, all of these will be available. We have bespoke configurations available, so Geth and proof of authority, Quorum with Istanbul BFT or Raft, and Hyperledger Besu with POA and IBFT. We also have a deep dive link to learn more about the recommended configurations and number of nodes. So we'll bring our blockchain to life by adding a node. We can choose which region we want to deploy it in, since this is a multi-region environment. And now we can weave in some native cloud integrations owned by our organization. So key management services for heightened security and encryption, log streaming for diagnosis, troubleshooting, optimization, ad hoc or scheduled backups, giving you the entirety of the blockchain file system and signing materials, great for business continuity, and then optional private networking, routing traffic solely on the cloud backbone. Lastly, you're going to choose the t-shirt size of your node, depending on the performance and the throughput that you need, and choose if this node is going to be a signer. Click finish, and you've now bootstrapped your blockchain. So with a few clicks, you've brought this thing to life. This was Geth and proof of authority, so I'm going to add an additional node here. It's recommended to have an odd number of nodes to avoid forks. So we'll click that, and these nodes will take about a minute to initialize and come up. So while they're coming up, we're going to go back to our business network, back to our consortia level view, and we're going to look at the participation, the membership of this network. So there's two routes here. We can create memberships if perhaps we have multiple departments or business entities in our organization, and those will all be bound to the founding or owning organization. Alternatively, we can decentralize our business network by onboarding independent, autonomous external organizations. And this is the true ethos of blockchain, allowing multiple independent parties to participate and have shared control of that ledger, of that infrastructure. We weave governance and permissions into this layer. So as someone is onboarded, you can choose if they're allowed to create signing nodes, if they're allowed to have administrative actions with regard to environments, if they can onboard additional orgs, if they can create multiple memberships, or if they can manage smart contracts, which we're going to look at next in this demo. So staying at the consortium level view, the business network view, we've created a new lifecycle management feature around smart contracts. This is going to provide the consortium, all of the participants, with a shared view of a smart contract. So you can import via GitHub, or you can supply raw compiled bytecode and a corresponding interface. So we'll show you the route through GitHub using a trivially simple smart contract with a get and a set and one global variable. So this is called simple storage. We're going to link to this repo, provide the path to the Solidity file. We'll give a description of our project. We don't need to enumerate it because there's a single contract in there. This is a public repo, so no access token, and then we'll build it. So this is actually going to compile that Solidity code. It's going to create the ABI, it's going to create the bytecode, and it's going to allow us to generate what we call a gateway API. An open API specification of the methods in that smart contract. So as we promote to an environment, this is going to generate that API, that open API spec. So we'll create a name for the gateway, call it SS for simple storage. And now we're going to select the environment that we want to promote this interface to. So a really cool thing here is that you can iterate on a smart contract on a project, promote it to a dev environment. Once it's hardened, you can take that same compilation, that same interface, and promote it to, for example, a production environment. So this is an open API specification that we're going to now deploy to create an instance of this smart contract. So this is our gateway named SS for simple storage, and we'll use the root post method to instantiate this. This will return synchronously, so we'll get a response when that transaction has been mined. And we can also apply a human readable, intuitive name for this rather than dealing with hexadecimal. So really easy for the entire business network to identify this smart contract. So we'll pass a init value to the constructor of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this will be mined in approximately 5 seconds with proof of authority, and we see the payload response, transaction success. So we've now created an instance of that gateway API. An actual smart contract has been deployed onto the blockchain. We see it defined down here, instance, simple storage, 1, 2, 3. And now we can actually interact with that instance API. We can upsert new state for our global variable, or we can perform a query. So we see the difference between a gateway and an instance. An instance is the instantiation of a gateway. So we can do a quick get to see our current state of our global variable, and we should see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which we do. And it's that easy to interact with a smart contract on Kaleido. There's no need for Web3, no need for thick client libraries and esoteric complex APIs. We've abstracted that entire layer and given you, common paradigms, common RESTful endpoints to program against. Last thing to take a look at is just diving into a node so we can see all the low-level details, pertinent metrics, wallets, logs, etc. So that does it for demo number 1. We will go to the deck. The next thing we kind of want to touch on is something of an industry-specific problem that we're seeing. The ability for organizations to exchange and share data, but for that data also to remain private. So we see, a few of these bullet points here where there's these, enormous operating costs for bad data. In particular, in healthcare, we see these payers spending over $2 billion a year trying to improve provider data. A lot of replicated efforts, a lot of duplicated efforts, and a lot of subsequent costs that arise, when you have incorrect data. So the demo that we're actually going to show you guys is going to address this problem. It's around a data marketplace, and it allows you to pin proofs or hashes of private data onto the blockchain, and it weaves in a token-based economy, allowing for organizations to purchase data, to rate data. And it's really a beautiful abstraction of blockchain. Blockchain is there as the trust anchor, as the indelible source of truth. But quite frankly, when you see the app, you won't even necessarily know that you're interacting with blockchain. So we see that the storage and the transfer will be done off-chain. The hash of the document in question, the payload, will be pinned to the blockchain. And everybody will have a real-time, automated, updated view of what's going on. So real quickly, this demo, this solution weaves in a good number of the services that we have in the platform. First and foremost is the document store. That should be pretty self-explanatory, but it's a really convenient utility allowing you to, upload, transfer, download documents. We use our on-chain registry, which is more or less X509 identity proofs for an organization, under which are key value pairs that allow us to sign and asymmetrically encrypt the payloads that are traveling on our document stores. Smart contract management, which we kind of just looked at, our REST API gateway, which makes it very easy to submit transactions synchronously or asynchronously, and then event streams, allowing all of the dApps, all of the organizations participating in this business network to be reliably notified of pertinent on-chain transactions and events. So without further ado, let's take a look at the marketplace demo. So what we're looking at here is we have 3 instances of a marketplace dApp, org1, org2, and org3. And this is what they're ultimately going to communicate with the blockchain through. So the back end is our blockchain, our Kaleido environment, which we just looked at. Each org has a node, and each org has an instance of a document store service. Org number 1 has used Kaleido storage for the document store, as has org number 2. So this means that the containers, the documents are stored on a Kaleido hosted service. Now, if we look at org 3, they've actually integrated their document store service with an AWS S3 bucket. So those files are going to remain private in their own cloud storage. The document store and the Kafka pipes underpinning it are simply going to provide an interface and a transfer utility. The next important thing with the document store is this notion of a destination. This is essentially your address, your inbox, where documents are going to be sent to you. So each org inside of our application here inside of our services has a destination. So we see that org2 has a destination, org3 has a destination. And these destinations actually live inside of our on-chain registry. These are key value pairs that sit beneath the X509 certificates. So if you want to compartmentalize your business logic, you can add multiple destinations. Very easy to do. And now we're going to take a look at that on-chain registry. So we see organization A defined by their membership ID. So they have an X509 proof, they have a certificate, they have an Ethereum account bound to that, and they also have a member profile under which we see a destination and the corresponding certificate. So these certificates are what is going to be used to asymmetrically encrypt payloads that are being sent to a counterparty. So before we continue, it may be helpful to take a look at a few pictures. So notice here that we have two different instances of a document store, client A, client B, and the document stores can be woven into those cloud services, into Microsoft Azure, into AWS S3, or they can be stored on Kaleido. Very simple. Then we see our on-chain registry here, where those destinations and the underlying certificates serve as key value pairs. So for example, if client A wanted to transfer a document to client B, they would use the underlying certificate of client B's destination to encrypt that payload that would be transferred, sharded, enveloped, encrypted via Kafka, and then delivered, where client B is the only one that can decrypt it with the corresponding private key. So those are the two core components that kind of make up the document store and the transfer pipes. So continuing with the demo. We'll show you how easy it is to upload a document and actually transfer a document simply using the document store. And then we'll abstract all of this componentry and we'll use the dApp to perform the same thing with really, really simple APIs. So we can imagine that this could be private credentials, this could be healthcare data, this could be IoT data, this could be legalese or contracts, really anything, right? There's a litany of use cases for private data. So we'll access our private credentials for Bob. We'll use our really convenient send button, and we'll choose org number 3 as the recipient of these private credentials. So this isn't weaving in tokens. This isn't using a dApp. This isn't abstracting the APIs. This is simply using the in-product utility to transfer a document from one entity to another. So we see it changes from sent to received. And now we can log into the document store for org3, the recipient, and easily locate that file, download that file, inspect that file. So a very, very intuitive, very simple product to use. Now let's take a look at how this works with regards to an actual dApp or an application. So what we want to do is we want to publish some data, assert that we have ownership of something that's relevant, something that's useful to the rest of the network. I think we use private IoT sensor data in this example. Again, this could be any data that is relevant to your business network, to your use case. So we're going to publish this data, and events are going to be emitted as soon as this is invoked, as soon as this transaction is invoked to our smart contract. All of the other applications, all of the other participants in the network in real time are going to be notified that a new document around private IoT data has been published. So very easy to search for the data. We see that org number 1 is the author, is the owner. But now if we want to look at this data through the lens of a different org, say perhaps org number 3, they can immediately search for that data because they received an event. That data was published. So we see that it's available for purchase. It has not been rated. So org3 can seamlessly purchase this document. And what you'll notice in the bottom right are token balances. So this is weaving in token economics to this use case. So each document in our example costs 10 tokens. Obviously, you can apply your own economics, your own amounts to this use case. So that's purchased. We see a decrement of 10 down to 790, and we'll see an increment of 10 up to 1470. So all of these transfers, all of these purchases all of these invocations and ratings, these are actually calls to the blockchain. Every one of these is a smart contract operation. This is an invocation, and all of these are emitting events too. So as that was rated right there, an event was emitted, letting org number 2 know that this private IoT data has been purchased one time and it has been rated with a 5-star rating. And that's relevant too, because perhaps they want to buy this data as well. So very, very, very easy to understand and digest this. So taking a look at these latter 2 slides, we first look at the REST API gateway, and we saw that in a very lightweight sense on the previous smart contract management demo. But ultimately what this allows you to do is this allows you to remove Web3 from the equation. So as those transactions are being invoked to the blockchain, those are not complicated Web3 API calls. Those are simple REST calls to the pertinent method in the smart contract. And they're going to be reliably delivered via Kafka and ultimately drip fed into the network. And we see that this layer here, this ETH Connect layer, is handling a lot of the really nuanced things in Ethereum, whether it's type mapping, RLP encoding, and especially nonce management, the sequencing and ordering. And then the next thing we wanted to talk about is sort of the opposite flow of the REST API gateway. We see how easy it is to take transactions coming in, but it's also incredibly relevant to consume transactions, consume events. So any event that's been defined in the smart contract, a subscription can be applied to that. And we'll take a look at how easy that is to do at the conclusion of this demo. So we're going to jump into node number 1. We're going to jump into the ETH Connect layer, the REST API gateway, and we're going to click on the smart contracts. We see that we have 2 that are involved with this use case. A payment one, this is an ERC20 for the tokens, and then a marketplace contract, which actually has the bulk of the logic involved, rating, purchasing, transferring, etc. And we see that we have 5 event streams defined here, and we're subscribed to the methods that we care about inside of the contract. Published, destination sent, rated, purchased, and delivery confirmed. So every time that method is invoked, an event will be emitted and it will be delivered to the webhook, the endpoint that is associated with that event stream. So we see how easy it is to do this. All you do is you create an event stream and then you apply that resource ID to the pertinent event and you create that subscription. And this allows you to be notified in real time of everything that's going on. So what this is just our document store, a bunch of really, really useful code snippets, show you how easy it is to use those common techniques that I referenced to do transfers, to do deletes, to do downloads. And this is really, all you need to do, plug and play to build your application. And then lastly, as Steve mentioned, every single thing you can do inside of the console within a service is backed by a really clean, really simple API. So there's APIs for all of the administrative operations, nodes, environments, consortia, credentials, and then also really, really clean APIs for all of the services, such as document store.
With Kaleido, we're all about business networks, making those very simple for you to both to start and to grow and scale, and for enterprise. So we touched on a number of aspects of enterprise throughout the presentation and the demo. You saw a demo where you could create, if you're saying, look, all of this is great, I'm really early on my journey, all I want to do is just start and create a node. You saw how you saw Nick do that in just a matter of a minute. We do have a free starter plan that's available for anyone online to just sign up and try. If you're a little farther along in your journey and you're thinking about, I have an existing application, how can I port that on to Kaleido? That's something that we have specialists on the team that could help you talk through that. And really, you saw at least some of the capabilities of the platform and the richness that we really put at your fingertips. You want to build a really engaging, interesting app that solves a specific problem in your industry. And you're looking at the new programming constructs that have come along, whether that's tokenization or zero-knowledge proofs, or you want to apply this blockchain technology into an existing pattern, whether it's a private messaging exchange or a document exchange like we've seen today. Most projects, by the way, do have some form of off-chain data exchange built into them. And that's why we've built these services and capabilities. You saw in the demo, Nick create a cross-cloud chain. And if he were to go on, he could have decentralized that and invited members who could have joined and spun up nodes within their own control. I'll remind you or take you back in conclusion to really the first diagram that I showed about Kaleido. It's really that control plane where you can start anywhere on the spectrum of open source, cloud, and private or hybrid or private stack. You can start anywhere and spin up those resources and then grow and expand over time. So that's kind of a snapshot of what Kaleido is. I hope that was useful, and now we're really excited to jump in and engage with some of the questions that you've had. So feel free. There's still time to add them into the queue, but Andrew, let's jump in.
Yeah, so I think the first one we've got relates to kind of access, control, roles, and permissions. So kind of specifically about can you change access control after an external org has been onboarded? And maybe we can kind of broaden that and think more broadly about roles and permissions in Kaleido.
Yeah, so I'll throw out a few thoughts, and if anyone in the room wants to chip in, that's great too. But one is just the design approach that I've mentioned already, and that's that we understand that you're going to start somewhere and that you're going to grow over time. And so we've designed the overall system and data model to handle that. You know, everything in a data model has a life cycle and can change and grow over time. One thing that's interesting about a consortium or a business network or a private network, whatever lingo you want to use, is you know, the idea of how much decentralization do you really want to build into this network. We allow you to choose. So one pattern, for example, we see is that of a business operator, or a network operator, where this party is set up and has some amount of delegated control. And we find that you know, that's commonly used just for efficiency's sake, for coordination's sake, and as a practical means to really grow and scale the network over time. And so we've built that network operator, those permissions into the platform. You can empower that party to do certain things. Equally, you can choose for members to retain a certain amount of control as well. That starts with things like owning resources, owning keys, owning data around the nodes. You can completely decentralize that, but also it's just practical things like billing and whether, you know, the parties pay their own way or the billing's rolled up. Because that's such a unique and critical aspect of a business network, of a blockchain network, we do take quite a lot of care into the design and in making sure that you have sort of the full menu of choices, and you can tailor the amount of control or where that control lies. And typically the most common pattern is to start a little bit more centralized and then over time add in more decentralization into the network. And so we're certainly built for that use case.
Great. So another question related directly to the demo. Do all members on the network see the gateway? Do they all have the same API gateway, sort of as abstracted by Kaleido, that they can interact with? And how do members ensure that they're sort of hitting the same smart contract at the given address? So kind of a technical question, but.
Hi, so I'm Peter Fortes here. I'll take that one. So we deliberately took the approach that with the REST API gateway, everybody should be able to use their own nodes, their own nonce management, their own keys to interact with the contracts on chain. And that means that each participant is going to use a unique host name of their own node to be able to talk to the REST API gateway. But what we did with the smart contract management feature is we made it so that when you promote a smart contract, either when you've already compiled or you use our managed compilation service to do that compilation, we store the results, the bytecode, the ABI, in a central registry, which is available to all of the nodes in the network. And as a result, the same API will be available on all nodes automatically. And that includes if you register it under a friendly path name. And so that means that you can roll out the application stack to each individual member, your own application, with the Open API, the Swagger embedded inside of it, so that it knows how to talk to the API with the same path. And the only thing that needs to change for each one of those apps is it needs to know the URL of the node it's going to use to access. And they'll all have access to that REST API.
So another question, was the client org front-end app made with Trufflebox, React? Maybe kind of we could speak to kind of what's involved, behind the curtains there, and just curious kind of more about connecting client apps with the Kaleido backend.
So let me talk about just the general connection of applications to Kaleido, and maybe Nick could talk a little bit about how the app shown in the demo was built. So when you're connecting an application to Kaleido, the first thing to say is that that connection is always secure by default. So regardless of whether you're using our REST API or you're using a thick Web3 library, from JavaScript, Go, etc. Whatever that connection is, we're going to enable strong generated security credentials by default. Now, the network connection that you use can either be on the public internet, which is the default, or on some of our higher plan tiers, particularly if you're using AWS, you can actually use a feature called Private Link to connect your own cloud accounts to your node running fully managed in Kaleido through the AWS backbone. And that means that that connection, which is itself TLS encrypted and with these strong security credentials, on top of all that, will be going across the AWS backbone rather than across the internet. And then in terms of the two main options you have for how you build your application, it really is, do you want to put all of the logic for constructing and sending transactions and managing these nonces, this sequence and ordering into your application and do all of that yourself? In which case, pick up a Web3 library and connect to the JSON RPC endpoint of the node using either HTTPS or WebSockets. Or would you like Kaleido to just manage all of that for you, do high throughput scaling and scale delivery across your horizontally scaled application of those transactions onto the chain, give you a simple REST interface for reading data that gives you back simple JSON payloads all across a REST API, and build your application just like any other web or mobile application that you build using standard API tooling, whatever your favorite development stack is, whether that's React or Vue or whatever that would be. In that case, you would be encouraged to use the REST API gateway, because all of that complexity that you can pull inside of your applications with the Web3 libraries is taken away and managed for you by the platform.
Yeah, I guess to speak to the app in a little more specificity, it does indeed use React for the front-end browser. But as Peter was just mentioning, extolling the virtues of our REST API gateway and the simplicity that it offers, we don't need Truffle. We don't need Web3 modules. We just have those simple RESTful endpoints for the methods in our smart contract. And that's what's being used to actually speak to the blockchain there with that application. As those transactions are submitted, then we consume those events through the same Kafka tier. So very, very simple to develop and build taking that approach.
Just adding one thing to what Nick said there. So you don't need Truffle at runtime for all of the building of your web application, we do really encourage you to look at Truffle for building the unit tests of your Solidity on-chain code. If you're not just able to use an off-the-shelf ERC contract from OpenZeppelin and you're building the contract logic, really encourage you to use Truffle as a fantastic framework for iteratively building the on-chain code, even though, as Nick says, you don't actually need it when you come to the runtime web or mobile app.
So a question here about consortia specifically. So does Kaleido have proposed frameworks on how to construct a viable consortium, create and manage that shared IP, and distribute the economic benefits of the network back to the members of the consortium?
Yeah, so I think it's a very good set of questions. Kaleido has experience working with, I think we've actually done, Andrew, if you recall, we do have other webinars we've done in the past of best practices that we found in working with a number of consortiums. Kaleido really is a technology platform, and so what we often do is partner with services teams. Consensus is a team that we partner very closely with. We partner with others as well. And so generally those organizations have built those sorts of frameworks, help you from an advisory perspective, walk through things like business governance and so on. Where Kaleido comes in is when you want to turn business governance into, when you want to enforce that or operationalize that, that's where Kaleido comes in with the purpose-built sort of control plane and data plane that you can take those governance those governance rules and turn them into shared IT and actually operationalize those. So depending on the organization that you're in and the relationships that you have, engaging with Kaleido means, we can certainly start the conversation with you. And if there are additional partners that make sense, we're happy to have that conversation as well to help you make that selection going forward.
So a couple of technical questions kind of relating back to the demo. So in relation to the second demo that Nick presented, could we comment on how ZKP or zero-knowledge proofs can be layered into Kaleido to toggle privacy controls for the text file that's shared from org1 with org2, but perhaps not viewable by org3? So maybe sort of a broader comment about ZKPs and privacy and how that could play out in the demo that we did.
So I think I'll take that one. So the demo that was shown today was a particular flavor of a zero-knowledge proof that was performing some simple verification, basically balances and transfers. It's the most well-proven of all of the sets of zero-knowledge proof algorithms. You're very familiar with cases such as Zcash and others, which have used these for a number of years for that kind of proof of simple mathematical equations. Now, there are frameworks, including Kedit, that we partner with, things like Socrates as well, which allow you to build proofs for much more sophisticated things. As of yet, there's nothing as sophisticated as a smart contract language that you can compile down into proofs. But you can, for example, using a simple library and something like Socrates, create a proof that verifies a hash of a document is correct without sharing any details about that document. And then you could encode that into some on-chain logic, which could perform verification of that hash without sharing as many details about the hash. Now, that's quite a high-level comment about how the scenario would work, and there's probably more than we have time for today to really talk that through. But I would say that that sort of more sophisticated logic space of zero-knowledge proofs is a fast evolving space and really a cutting-edge part of the blockchain technology set. And one of the reasons why we partnered with experts like like Kenneth, who are focused on sort of evolving how you do that more sophisticated logic, such as agreement on exchange of a document, which would require multiple steps, and some more sophisticated logic than just is a balance above or below a certain value.
That was a wonderful technical answer, Peter. Just to add one thought, sort of one level up for the rest of us mere mortals. Privacy is really important. You know, you're setting up this business network, but most of the time you're only transacting with a very small subset of the actual network, and so we spend a lot of time working with our clients on the right privacy construct. We actually have 4 separate ways to do privacy just built into Kaleido. We don't think there's any one size fits all. But they range from, you know, the privacy that comes with the likes of Hyperledger Besu, Pegasus Plus, or Quorum, and Tessera. I think we had a question about Tessera and whether that is included. It absolutely is. It's something that if you just select Quorum as your provider, you get it. So there's sort of some native capabilities. There are known existing patterns like the document store you saw in the demo. That's off-chain private exchange of data. Remember that that demo is around private data exchange. We happen for the demo to have built a sort of data marketplace where you can buy those records if you want them, but it's private data exchange. Zero knowledge proofs is an emerging space that's really fascinating. We believe in it. We believe that it's going to have a lot of utility in the blockchain space. It is emerging, so you know, and it is fairly complex. But we have invested in that, and we have zero knowledge proof capabilities and partners as well.
So we've probably just got time for 1 or 2 more questions as we're coming up on the hour. So Steve, as a business network operator, are there options to white label Kaleido?
Yes, absolutely. So that's a learning that Sophia and I, when we founded Kaleido, we took from a prior role in building a blockchain as a service. We saw that as a day one necessity. We think a lot of these new systems are being built. It makes sense for Kaleido to go away, so to speak, to sort of blend into the platform that you are building. And so we have what we call an OEM agreement, or a style of partnership where you can white label and embed Kaleido completely into the platform that you're developing. And please connect with our business partnership team to have that conversation.
Great. So I think we're going to wrap it up. Thank you, everybody, for attending our webinar. Greatly appreciate your time. We will be following up with the slides and the recording in the next couple of days. You're welcome to reach out directly to our team if you have any following questions, and we'll happy to answer those individually offline. But again, thanks for joining Kaleido for our Building, Scaling, and Innovating on Kaleido product walkthrough webinar. Again, you can learn more at kaleido.io, and with that, we'll be signing off. Thank you, and have a great day.